Incredible millionaire returns home early. Discovers unexpected heartwarming surprise. James Waters stepped out of his sleek, black SUV into the familiar, yet sharply altered streets of Cedar Grove. The town that raised him felt like a relic from a bygone era, washed in a wave of nostalgia tinged with sadness. The air, once filled with the laughter of children, now hung heavy with unspoken concerns. James, now 38, a self-made millionaire gripped by his own triumphs, felt the bittersweet tide of memory crash over him like a wave at high tide. His heart raced as he took it all in the old diner that served the best pie, the library where he devoured books, and the park where he learned to ride his bike. But that park was now a shadow of its former self, filled with litter and neglect, the swing sets creaking in the lonely breeze. Rounding the corner, he surveyed the block where he had grown up, his parents' house still standing tall but showing signs of wear. He hadn't been back in years, too consumed by his ambitions in the bustling streets of New York City. But now, the homes of his childhood friends betrayed stories of struggle. The palpable energy of the community was dulled, and his chest tightened as the urgent reality hit him. Days after arriving, James learned that Mr. Henderson, his elderly neighbor who had once taught him about virtue and valor, was facing eviction due to staggering medical bills. James could feel the weight of that knowledge like an anchor on his soul. He felt detached from the world in which he had thrived, shielded by his wealth while people like Mr. Henderson battled against the tides of hardship. He had pursued the American dream, he had wealth and prestige, but what did that mean if his neighbors were losing their homes? One weekend, stirred by a mix of guilt and longing, James decided to host a gathering at the park, something small to connect with his old friends. The poster he made, with balloons and laughter in mind, felt more poignant than he intended. He hoped it would bridge the distance that had grown between him and those he once held dear. But as the day approached, he worried if they would even welcome him back after all those years spent chasing the latest corporate gold. At the meeting, he felt the simmering resentment in their eyes. Questions buzzed in the air. The whispers were like sharpened needles. Did he really understand their lives? Did he think money could solve everything? A knot formed in his stomach. When he'd finally spoken, the burden of judgment weighed upon him. He was painfully aware of their hurt and disappointment. He felt it like 1,000 tiny reminders of a past he'd turned his back on. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Just as he gathered his courage to speak, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd, his brother, Adam. Anger flashed in Adam's steely gaze. They hadn't spoken in years, a chasm of choices separating them. The air crackled with tension as old divisions threatened to snap back into place. James looked out at the sea of familiar faces, searching for connection amidst the judgment. In this moment, he realized that mending the fabric of this community would take more than just wealth. Would he dare to confront the judgments, not only from others but himself? As uncertainty gripped him, he sensed that this was only the beginning of a much bigger journey, a quest to find belonging, connection, and perhaps even redemption. Could he face the ghosts of his past and rebuild what was lost? The question lingered as heavy as the emotions, swirling around him, begging for a resolution that felt just out of reach. James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his brother's gaze on him. Adam's arms were crossed, a wall of defiance separating them even in this crowded park. The laughter of children echoed in the background, completely at odds with the tension hanging in the air. It felt surreal, stepping back into a world he once knew so well but now felt foreign. "Look, I know this might be awkward," James began, his voice firmer than he felt. He cleared his throat, trying to shake off the anxiety that curled around his heart. "I wanted to bring us all back together, to talk, reconnect. I know how things have changed." He gestured to the state of the park, hoping his words would mend the rift. And I want to help. A disdainful chuckle cut through the crowd. It belonged to Mark, a childhood friend whose own dreams had faded over the years. Help? With what, money? This isn't about money, James. You think you can just swoop in here, drop cash, and fix everything? The harshness in his tone felt like a punch, and James flinched. James ran a hand through his hair, grappling with the reality that surrounded him. He could offer financial support, sure, but could that truly heal the wounds of time? A brief silence engulfed the gathering as other voices joined the chorus, whispering their frustrations and feelings of betrayal. He tried to meet their eyes, but he was met mostly with downturned faces, carried by disappointment. "You've been out there living your dream," a woman chimed in with a quiver in her voice. "Guess you forgot about us, huh?" James swallowed hard, a lump rising in his throat. "No, I didn't forget. I was trying to build a life. I thought I was helping by succeeding. But we're still here," Adam cut in, his voice low but fierce. "It's easy to talk about change when you don't have any stakes in the game. You've gotten rich, and we're losing everything." Those words hung in the air, a barbed truth that stung. James's heart raced, anger coursing through him, but beneath it lay an undeniable hurt. On one hand, he understood their struggles, but on the other, he felt cornered, fighting against their judgment. "All I want is to understand. I thought if I came back, maybe I could make things right." At that moment, James noticed Mr. Henderson standing off to the side, his frail frame casting a long shadow in the afternoon sun. A flicker of recognition in the old man's tired eyes propelled James forward. "Mr. Henderson," he called, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm here to help. Please tell me what you need." The silence was deafening. Eyes turned to the elderly neighbor, waiting for his reaction. Mr. Henderson took a moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he shuffled forward, leaning heavily on a cane. "James," he said, his voice raspy but steady, "money can fix problems. But it can't fix hearts, and it can never fix pride." James felt as though he'd been punched in the gut. For the first time, he grappled with the idea that this was more than financial loss. It was about community, trust, and love. Could he mend the wounds he had opened in the name of success? Could his presence bring hope, rather than longing? As the weight of the moment sank in, he realized he had a long road ahead of him, one paved with genuine conversation and rebuilding bridges. He turned back to the crowd, feeling more determined than ever to connect not as a millionaire, but as a brother, a friend, and perhaps a neighbor once more. But just as he opened his mouth to speak again, a sudden shout pierced the tension. "Look out! The swings are falling!" Heads turned and panic erupted. The playful laughter suddenly twisted into cries of alarm as the decrepit swings began to crash to the ground. James's heart raced once more. What would happen next? Could he truly step up in this moment when it mattered most? Adrenaline surged through James as he rushed toward the swings, a jolt of instinct urging him to act. The laughter of children morphed into screams, and chaos descended on the park like a dark cloud. Time seemed to slow as he scanned the scene, the sun glinting off the metal chains that now hung limply, threatening and ominous. "Get back! Everyone, move away!" he shouted, his voice slicing through the panic. He spotted a group of kids frozen in shock, their eyes wide with fear. One little girl clutched her teddy bear, tears streaming down her cheeks. But amid the frenzy, James saw something clearer. The swing-s structure groaning under its own weight could bring more than just injury. It could rip apart what little their community had left. With each step, he could hear the chains clanking, the creaking metal evoking an unsettling nostalgia. It reminded him of the carefree days they'd spent at the park, swinging under the sun, laughter echoing. His heart ached as he realized those days felt like a lifetime ago. Memories resurfaced, but now the clarity of the present was sharper than ever. "Help me!" he yelled to Adam, who stood frozen at the edge, uncertainty etched in his expression. After a tense moment, Adam sprang into action. The pair dashed toward the swing set, adrenaline sinking their movements as they raced past yelling parents and running children. "Grab that pole," James directed, pointing at one of the metal supports holding the swings. Adam hesitated for a second, but quickly nodded and went for it. Their hands grappled over the pole, James feeling the steady pressure of his brother's grip. In that moment, despite everything, something began to shift between them. On three, James called out, his voice steady despite the madness. 1, 2, 3. They heaved, pushing with all their might. Their straining muscles protested, but they kept pulling, lifting the pole up and steadying the structure just enough to avert disaster. A few feet away, parents scrambled to grab their confused children, ushering them away from the danger. In that split second, everything was about survival. The swings finally found a balance, and the crowd's tension eased, their relief palpable. The panic subsided into whispers of disbelief, eyes wide with gratitude and astonishment. James and Adam exchanged glances, a fragile truce forming in the aftermath of chaos as they both gasped for breath. "Good job," Adam murmured, catching James's eye for the first time, not with anger, but with a flicker of admiration. A wave of relief washed over James, accompanied by the realization that this was an unexpected step toward healing. Maybe they could rebuild, not just the park but their bond too. As they caught their breath, he turned to face the crowd, which had shifted its gaze from fear to a slow-building applause. But then, amid the applause, James noticed Mr. Henderson stepping back, watching with a thoughtful expression. The old man's murky eyes held a depth of understanding, as if he recognized a spark of hope igniting between him and Adam. James dared to wonder if this moment could be the beginning of something more than just survival. Before he could dwell on these thoughts, a new sound broke through. "Are you hurt? Did anyone get hit?" A woman shouted, her voice growing more frantic as she frantically scanned the crowd. "Someone check the little girl." Another voice called out. The moment shifted again, and tension heightened once more. James blinked, his heart racing anew. Had anyone truly been hurt? He could feel dread creeping in, preparing him for another round of chaos. "Stay here," he finally yelled back to Adam, before rushing towards the commotion, desperation fueling his steps. What awaited him, he had no idea, but he knew he had to face it. Would this moment draw them all closer together, or would the community fracture further? The challenge wasn't over, not by a long shot. James pushed his way through the gathering crowd, hearts pounding together in the commotion. The air felt thick, heavy with concern. He could hear the murmur of voices blending into an anxious hum, drowning out the distant chirping of birds that normally filled the park with life. As he got closer, he glimpsed the little girl, the same one with the teddy bear, now sitting on the grass, her expression a mixture of confusion and fear. "Is she okay?" James asked the gathering group. Parents knelt beside their children, their eyes wide with worry, helplessness painted across their faces. "I think she just got knocked down," a man shouted as he gently lifted the girl, searching for signs of injury. The child seemed dazed but intact, which gave James a brief surge of relief, but the fear behind the parents' clenched jaws and quick breaths was palpable. "Thank goodness," James murmured under his breath, but that wasn't enough. He could feel the weight of unanswered questions filling the air around him. Had it only been a minor scare? Or was this really just the beginning of something much worse? Suddenly, James felt a tug at his shirt. He turned to see the little girl, a faint glimmer of recognition in her tear-streaked face. "Are you a hero?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A wave of warmth washed over him, mingling with the urgency still boiling in his veins. "No, just someone who cares," he replied softly, kneeling down so their eyes met. "What is your name?" "Lily," she said, clutching her teddy bear tightly. "Lily," he repeated, feeling a pang in his heart. Out of all the chaos, he recognized the innocence of her fear, a mirror to all that had been lost and strained in their little community. As he tried to talk to her, he noticed Adam standing just behind him. His brother's expression was a mix of concern and empathy, and for a moment, time paused. A connection sparked. James could see the softening in Adam's eyes as he came closer. "Hey, Lily," Adam said, crouching beside James. "You did a great job being brave." Lily managed a weak smile, perhaps feeling a flicker of comfort in that moment. Families gathered around, voices calming, exchanging stories of the fright they had just experienced. It was as if the fear was dissipating slowly, transforming into a collective memory that would somehow bind them together more tightly. James felt that something significant was rising within him, something deep and unyielding, like the sun trying to break through dark clouds. The past few months had been tough for everyone, losses and disappointments piling up higher than the swings they had just saved. But maybe today's events had opened a door, a chance for connection, for finding strength not as individuals, but as a community. "Let us take it one step at a time," he said, glancing at Adam, who nodded in agreement, his previous anger fading with each shared smile from the familiar faces around them. At last, Mr. Henderson stepped forward, his presence commanding attention once more. "This park is our sanctuary. We all feel it. We need to make sure it stays safe for our future," he declared, voice firm and resolute. The crowd murmured in agreement, a flicker of hope igniting once again. But just then, James' eyes caught a glimpse of the twisted metal of the swing set, its structure still ominous amidst the gathering bonds. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind them. James spun around, heart racing anew. What now? When he turned, would he be ready for what he'd face next? The sound of shattering glass cut through the heavy air like a knife. People gasped and turned their heads, anxiety flooding back in an instant. James's heart raced as he took a cautious step towards the source of the noise. He felt Adam's hand on his shoulder, grounding him, anchoring him amidst the chaos. "Stay close," Adam urged, his voice steady despite the worry etched across his face. As they moved toward the direction of the crash, James's mind spun. Was it just a fallen branch? Or something worse, something far more dangerous? Every inch felt like an eternity. He could see fragments of glass glinting on the ground like fallen stars, scattered and lost. Two teenagers, caught in the aftermath of their own moment of recklessness, stood by an overturned trash can, rummaging through the contents as if searching for something they had lost. The realization hit James like a wave. They had knocked over the can. "What are you doing?" James called, his voice rising above the murmurs of the gathering crowd. One of the boys turned. A sheepish smile replaced the earlier bravado. "Just trying to help clean up. We heard the crash." He gestured vaguely, as if to signify the virtue of their intentions. Adam exchanged glances with James, and despite the rising tension, there was a flicker of understanding between them. Mistakes happen. Maybe this was a chance for a different kind of connection. "Help? Or are you just making it worse?" James challenged, but his tone was softer than his words. He could see that these kids were caught in their own wreckage, a surge of frustration welling up inside him, but quickly replaced by compassion. Lily, still clutching her teddy bear, watched from a distance, her small face filled with wide-eyed confusion. In that moment, her innocence felt like a tether, binding them all in a fragile moment of vulnerability. Adam stepped forward. "Why don't we all just take a breath? We can work together." For a moment, there was silence. Everyone stood rooted, watching the boys. Slowly, they nodded, their bravado fading as they scanned the eyes around them, looking for acceptance. People began to gather, forming a circle around the mess. "We can clean up this park together," a voice called out. "It's ours to protect." Encouraged, the group of parents and children strolled over, armed with determination and an unexpected sense of unity. James felt his heart swell as he watched the recovery take shape. A connection built not just from shared fear, but from shared responsibility too. As they worked side by side, laughter crept awkwardly through the earlier tension. Jarred voices filled the air as they shared little snippets of their lives, stories of struggles and triumphs, layered atop each moment spent cleaning. James wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. There was something about this experience that felt transformative. It was as if each piece of glass, each fallen branch, was not just debris, it was a fragment of their stories, intermingling, creating a new narrative of resilience. Then, a small child cried out, "Look! A puppy!" The crowd parted, and a scruffy little dog appeared, wagging its tail joyously. Suddenly, the mood shifted again, the laughter louder now, fading away the remnants of fear. Lily jumped up, her fear dissipating entirely as she rushed over to the puppy, forgetting the chaos that had just moments ago gripped her heart. The little girl and the puppy danced around each other, and James couldn't help but smile. Hope had sprouted in unexpected places. But amid the joy, an undercurrent lingered. What if this newfound connection didn't hold against the more profound threats that loomed, ones far beyond shattered glass? "Can we keep the puppy?" A voice piped up from the crowd, and laughter erupted once more. As the crowd enveloped the puppy in love and laughter, part of James wondered what melody tomorrow would play. In that moment of unity, this brief slice of happiness filled him with a warmth he had longed for. Would this unity survive the storms waiting just beyond the park gates? James felt the uncertainty tug at him, whispering reminders of what was at stake, but inside, hope flickered like the sunlight breaking through the clouds above. And then came the distant sound of sirens piercing through their laughter. The world was slowly coming back to reality. Would they be prepared for the challenges ahead? The laughter faded as the sound of sirens drew closer, slicing through their moment of joy. The crowd shifted uneasily, glancing at each other with tired expressions, as though they were caught in a dream that was about to be shattered. James felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Maybe it's nothing, Adam suggested, but the doubt in his voice betrayed him. The puppy continued to romp around Lily, chasing the fabric of her coat as she twirled in playful exuberance. To her, the sirens were just an echo of an adventurous world she hadn't yet learned to fear. James watched her, wishing he could share her innocence, even if just for a moment. Adam turned to the group. "Let us finish cleaning up this glass. We need to make sure the park is safe, especially for the kids." Murmurs of agreement swept through the crowd, and they returned to work, brushing fragments into bags. Each shard felt like a small victory, but James couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing just outside their circle of light. A mother with a worried frown glanced at her child. "Do you think it could be a dangerous situation?" she murmured. James's heart sank. A part of him wanted to dismiss those fears. After all, they had transformed a moment of chaos into possibility. But if danger truly loomed, could they really hold on to this fragile connection? "Let us focus on this," Adam said, attempting to steer the conversation away from fear. "We are in this together." The comforting tone in his voice reminded James of the strength they had found in unity. As they carried on, James caught sight of a couple of teens lingering at the edge of the crowd. They watched the activity with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty, unsure of where they belonged. James felt a spark of empathy. He remembered all too well that feeling of isolation. "Hey, wanna help us?" he called to them, motioning with an outstretched hand. The kids hesitated but slowly made their way over, their shoulders more relaxed with each step. "Cool puppy," one of the boys said, glancing at Lily and the scruffy little dog. "Thanks. The more the merrier," James replied, the warmth he felt earlier returning as he welcomed them into their circle. They began picking up pieces of glass with the rest of the group, some undoubtedly still brimming with guilt about their earlier actions. As their work continued, the sirens faded into the background, the buzz of laughter slowly regaining its place. But just as the tension began to lift, a police car pulled up alongside the park, its shiny blue lights spinning in a dance of urgency. James's heart raced. The officer stepped out, scanning the crowd and then making a beeline toward their small assembly. He felt Adam's hand tighten on his shoulder again, a silent reminder of their bond amidst uncertainty. "Is everyone all right here?" the officer shouted, his tone firm yet approachable. "Yes," Lily responded eagerly, running up to the officer, the puppy in her arms. "We're cleaning up. Look at the puppy." The officer smiled. It was a small but softening gesture amidst the seriousness of the moment. "Good to see you all helping out. But we need to ensure you're okay. There's been a reported disturbance nearby. Team up. Stay together." The air thickened with unease again. James turned to the crowd, faces shifting from smiles to anxiety. "Team up," he whispered to himself, as if rehearsing the words in a new way. It was more than just cleaning up broken glass. This was about safety, about each other. Adam stepped forward. "We can do this together." We've already faced something tough today, but look at the good we created. Let us keep the spirit alive. But a question lingered at the back of James's mind. How much longer would this joy last when the real world came crashing in? And then, beyond the laughter, the police officer received a call over the radio, his expression hardening as he sighed deeply. Stay alert. There's more going on than you all realize. What did that mean? What else was coming their way? The crowd fell silent, eyes shifting from the officer's stern face to one another, a mix of confusion and fear. James could feel the weight of their gaze, and it pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. He squeezed his hands together, forcing himself to focus on Lily, who still held the puppy tightly. The officer continued, "We might need to clear this area. Better safe than sorry. If you have family or friends nearby, think about getting in touch." James's heart raced. The warmth from moments ago felt like a distant memory as a cold knot of anxiety formed in his chest. He glanced at Adam, whose expression mirrored his own worry. What do we do if James started? But the words caught in his throat. "We stick together," Adam said firmly, a resolve in his voice giving James a small spark of reassurance. Just then, Lily tugged at the officer's pants, her innocent face a welcomed contrast to the rising tension. "Officer, can I pet the dog?" With a chuckle, the officer bent down, his tough demeanor softening as he allowed the little girl to play with the puppy. The moment felt strangely comforting. James watched as smiles flickered back on some faces. It seemed small gestures could weave threads of warmth even in the face of uncertainty. "All right, everyone," the officer called again, straightening up, "let us move back a bit. We'll get to the bottom of this, but we need to keep things safe for now." A murmur of agreement spread, mixed with reluctance. The crowd began to instinctively shuffle closer together, parents gathering their children, young adults pulling together with those who had come to help. Yet James felt an unsettling urge to act. Maybe we could help? We could form a line or something. To help keep the park safe? He surprised himself with his own boldness, pushing through the fear. "That's a great idea," a woman in the crowd echoed, energized by the suggestion. With newfound purpose, they began forming a line, joining hands, creating a sort of human barrier. James felt warmth as he squeezed Adam's hand, knowing they were creating something protective, even if it wasn't flawless. As they stood together, James cast a glance at the officer. He was focused, issuing orders into his radio. James remembered the feelings of alienation from his earlier life, and something within him shifted. He wanted to fight for this moment, the courage in this collective unity. Suddenly, a loud bang boomed nearby, echoing through the trees. Gasps erupted from those around him. Faces paled, and James felt a jolt of adrenaline rush through him. "What was that?" someone whispered, eyes wide with fear. "Stay calm," the officer shouted, his voice carrying authority. "Keep holding hands. We're safer together." James looked into the eyes of those next to him. He felt their shared pulse of anxiety, but also a flicker of determination. They didn't have all the answers, none of them did, but they had each other. Just then, Lily tugged his shirt. "James, I'm scared." He knelt down, meeting her wide, innocent eyes. "I know, but look at everyone. We're all here together, right?" Her small nod brought some comfort, a stitch of hope in his heart. The puppy, sensing the tension, began to wiggle in her arms, its wagging tail offering a brief distraction. But then they heard the police officer receive another urgent dispatch. "We may need to take immediate action. Stay alert, everyone." James felt his pulse racing again. What did that mean? What action? He locked eyes with Adam. What if this is just the beginning? The question hung in the air, unspoken words weighing heavily on their shoulders, and they both sensed that the real challenge was just getting started. The air crackled with tension as the crowd's collective breath seemed to hold. James could see fear swimming in the eyes of those around him, especially in Lily's. The puppy, oblivious to the chaos, sniffed curiously at the ground. It felt surreal how a small creature could bring fleeting joy amid uncertainty. "Stay close," Adam urged, his grip on James tightening as people exchanged anxious glances. The officer was still barking commands, but the sound of his voice faded into the background. This was no longer just an announcement of danger, it was an impending confrontation with something darker. "We can't just stand here," James exclaimed, his heart pounding. The louder noises from the park, the distant chatter of fear, were mingling in his ears. What if there was a direct threat to them? What could he do? "Remember the plan," Adam said, eyes focused, determined. "We hold the line. No one gets separated. Together." That word echoed, buoying their spirits like an anchor in a storm. But that loud bang had sent a ripple of dread through him. It had been far too close for comfort. "Look!" someone shouted, pointing towards a commotion on the periphery of the park. Several figures were emerging from behind a cluster of trees, moving erratically. The crowd gasped again, the tension climbing higher. "Is it an animal?" a woman cried, clutching her toddler closer. "Maybe it's just a prank?" Another voice chimed in, but even the most optimistic souls were losing hope. "No." The officer's voice cut sharply through the chatter, despite the rising fear in the crowd. "We have to prepare for anything. Stay focused." James felt a torrent of conflicting emotions. Could they really protect one another? Could they quell the rising panic among the crowd with mere hands linked together? The calls for calm felt thin, fragile like glass, beautiful but easily shattered. Lily's eyes darted around, and she quietly squeezed his hand. He turned to her. "You trust me, right?" "Yeah," she whispered, but worry creased her brow, and that small admission churned in his gut. His mind raced. "Then let us keep our eyes on each other. If anything happens, we just stick together." The puppy barked suddenly, snapping James from his thoughts. It jumped from Lily's embrace, darting toward the approaching figures, tail wagging in pure oblivion. "No!" James shouted, instinctively lunging forward. Adam grabbed his arm, holding him in place. "Wait. Let us see what's happening." The crowd had shifted, the initial fear transforming into a mixed curiosity. James felt himself caught in that shift, suspended between the urge to protect and the need to understand. He watched as the figures approached, their faces slowly becoming clearer. They're just kids." A voice broke from the crowd. As they drew nearer, James could see their faces. A group of teenagers, waving their hands frantically, shouted words that rushed out but only occasionally reached his ears. "Help. We need help." "What is going on?" someone from the side yelled, trying to grasp the situation. James felt his stomach drop. If they were in trouble, how could they reach the safety of the line? Fear gripped him again, but this time, it mingled with something else: curiosity, concern, and a desperate need for action. "What do we do?" he asked Adam, his voice barely above a whisper. "We find out what they need." But as the crowd muttered nervously, James realized the stakes had shifted once more. A collective desire to protect surged through everyone, a flicker of hope in the chaos. Through the noise, a sudden clarity hit him. If they didn't act now, they might lose the chance to help and unite. The moment felt pivotal, charged with potential. "Let us move," he yelled, breaking through the line with Adam right beside him. But as they moved towards the teens, something dark shifted in the atmosphere, a warning that trouble was closer than they thought. What would they face when they reached them? James and Adam pushed through the crowd, a wave of uncertainty washing over them. The group of teenagers appeared frantic, darting glances over their shoulders as if something sinister lurked just outside of sight. The chaotic energy of the park felt almost suffocating now, the mixture of fear and urgency making every breath feel heavy. "Over here," one of the teens shouted, waving them closer. Her eyes were wide, bursting with a mix of desperation and relief. She was out of breath, her chest heaving as she turned partially to look behind her. The rest of her friends were closing the space between them, expressions mirroring her worry. "What happened?" James managed to ask, his pulse racing. He could almost hear the heartbeat of the crowd pulsing like a living entity, tension rising with every passing second. "Something attacking the ducks." "At the pond!" the girl exclaimed, pointing frantically. "It's huge. We didn't know what to do. We just thought someone should help." "What?" James's instinct flared. "What do you mean, something's attacking them?" Before they could answer, a chilling cry echoed from the direction of the pond. It was a horrible combination of a growl and a distressed quack that sent a shiver down his spine. Panic surged through the park like wildfire, drowning out any sense of calm. "Everyone stay where you are," the officer shouted again, but his voice barely cut through the chaos now. Adam squeezed James's shoulder, his face resolute. "We have to check it out. If those kids are right, we can't just stand by." James hesitated, fear clawing at his instincts. The thought of running toward danger felt reckless, but the thought of doing nothing while something might be hurting innocent lives filled him with dread. "Let us go together," he decided, steeling himself. "We can't just leave them." The two of them broke away from the now disoriented crowd and headed toward the pond, with the teenage group following close behind, their excited chatter mixing with the piercing cries from the water. As the image of innocent ducks flashed in his mind, doubt began to creep in. What if it's dangerous? Lily's voice interrupted his racing thoughts. She hadn't let go of his hand and now looked up at him, eyes wide with worry. "We'll stick together," he reassured her, but deep down he could feel the knot of uncertainty tightening in his stomach. As they neared the pond, the scene came into view. A large shadow loomed over the water, a creature thrashing about. The ducks quacked in terror, trying to flee, but the darkness in the water made it hard to see what was going on. And then, just as they crested the bank, James's heart dropped. The monster's form was not what he had expected. "It's just a dog," one of the teens shouted in relief. The creature paddled aggressively, its shaggy fur soaked and matted, scrambling after the flock. The group let out a collective breath. But the dog was more than a little out of control, and the ducks weren't soothing to the eyes. The desperation in the animal's struggle wasn't malicious, but seemed frantic, a wild exuberance that could easily lead to chaos in the park. "What do we do?" James felt the weight of the onlookers behind him. Before he could even think of an answer, the puppy barked again, leaping into action, as if sensing the chaos ahead. "No!" James watched in horror as the little creature bolted toward the turbulent water. Would it add more confusion, or could it somehow help? His heart raced, tension swallowing the excitement of the moment. Everything hinged on what would happen next as they moved toward the chaos, caught between the desperate cries of both the ducks and the distressed dog. Would they be able to save the day, or would the confusion only deepen with the arrival of one small puppy? In a heartbeat, the little puppy dove into the water, sending ripples spiraling through the chaos. All eyes were trained on the scene, the tension vibrating like a violin string ready to snap. James felt his heart in his throat, the weight of uncertainty suffocating him as the barking echoed against the backdrop of distressed quacks. "Stop!" he yelled, adrenaline propelling him to the water's edge, but it was too late. The puppy paddled with all its might, oblivious to the size of the threat that loomed ahead. "Someone needs to get it before it gets hurt," one of the teens cried, and James turned to see Adam moving with purpose, stepping near the bank, his confidence flaring amid the chaos. "Hold on, buddy," Adam shouted, trying to coax the pup back, his voice steady despite the frenzy. "Don't let the dog get to the ducks," James instinctively warned, his own heart racing as he slipped into the water, feeling the cold lake bite at his legs. His focus honed in on the frantic creature, the whirlpool of panic and chaos swirling around him. Lily's grip tightened on his hand, worry flooding her small features. "Will they be okay?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the clamor. "We're going to make sure they are," James swore, an almost primal determination roaring within him. He took a step forward deeper into the water, his feet sinking into the muddy ground, and Adam mirrored him, both propelled by a sense of purpose. "Stay back," the officer shouted from the shore, alarm creeping into his voice as he realized the group had moved toward the line of chaos. "I can get the dog," James shouted back, the words rallying something deep within him. This was about more than just ducks or one runaway puppy. This was about standing up for each other, for protecting something they all cherished. "Come on, buddy," he coaxed, splashing closer to the playful pup and the tumbling shadows, his heartbeat melding with the swift, chaotic moments around him. The dog seemed to sense their approach, the long strands of fur soaked, but alive with excitement, It turned towards them, eyes bright with innocent enthusiasm, unbothered by the turmoil it had caused a mere moment before. "Get him! Get him!" the teens shouted, their own adrenaline surging as they drew closer. James could see a mix of fear and excitement on their faces, uncertainty resting with hope. Kneeling by the edge, James reached out, his heart racing as the puppy broke free from the water and bounded toward him, showering his hands with droplets in joyful abandon. It nipped at his fingers, barking, unfazed by its environment, and for a moment, pure joy enveloped the situation. And then, he felt it, a collective sigh, a bittersweet recognition that they were all in this together. "Lily, come here," Adam called, his voice soothing. "Help me grab the puppy." As the two pulled the rambunctious dog from the water's edge, laughter erupted from the crowd, joy replacing panic. Just moments ago, uncertainty ruled the air. Now, they shared an unexpected unity that felt electric. "See? You're a hero," Lily exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with delight as she crouched down to pet the puppy, who bounced around like a tiny furry tornado. James's heart swelled. It was a small moment, perhaps, but it echoed loudly in their spirits, lifting the weight they had all been carrying. He stole a glance at Adam, who smiled back, a silent acknowledgement of the bond rekindling between them. "All right, we did it," Adam cheered, and the laughter spread like wildfire. Amid the clapping and cheers, James turned to the officer, who smiled back, pride brimming in his gaze. "Well done, everyone. Let us make sure those ducks are all right, too." As the crowd began to gather around the bank, shouting encouragement and support, James felt a ripple of connection wash over him. This wasn't just about rescuing a puppy or a group of ducks. It was about reclaiming their sense of community, stepping forward into a reality where they relied on one another. James let the excitement pulse through him, but beneath it ran a current of deeper realization. They weren't just cleaning up glass or holding lines, they were forming bonds that would withstand the test of time. The prior chaos faded, and he caught sight of Mr. Henderson, watching with tears of pride glistening in his eyes. With the dog now joyfully leaping around Lily once again, the crowd circled the pond, energy reignited, filled with hope for the future. Laughter echoed, even against the distant sirens, reshaping a narrative of resilience through shared joy. James took a deep breath, the warmth of connection blossoming in his heart. The world around them would always bring challenges, but here, today together they were creating something precious. "Let's South turn this park around," he called, raising his voice over the rumbling excitement. "Yeah," came the collective cheer, echoing a promise they would keep. It was time for a new beginning. And as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, James knew that this was where he was meant to be, not just a millionaire, but someone genuinely invested in the hearts of others. This was a chance for redemption, a chance to rebuild not just the park, but the bonds that would bring Cedar Grove back to life. So, let the challenges come. He was ready, and he wasn't alone. Now let us build this community back together. If you believe in the power of transformation and collective action, this is the time. You need to subscribe now to witness what happens next. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm. And please comment below with your reactions. How did you feel about the incredible journey of James and his community? Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation unfold. Together, we can inspire change.